Welcome to the Hustler's Guide to Flow. I'm your host, Marcia Miyake, and I'm taking you into the minds of some of the most incredible leaders in the medical, research, business, and yes, even spiritual fields to equip you with powerful insights and practical strategies to level up in business and in life. The next level version of yourself starts now. Today's guest is a no-nonsense expert on mindset, happiness, and flow. She's a member of the British Psychology Society, a certified NLP practitioner, and a life and business coach with over a decade experience in the field. I'm so excited to introduce the beautiful and incredibly insightful Sarah Gregg. In this episode, Sarah and I talk about what the psychology of flow teaches us about happiness and optimal performance, and how we can add more flow into our lives with a simple journal practice. And it's this practice that's the basis of her upcoming book, Find Your Flow. Go to findyourflowthebook.com to pre-order your copy now. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for making the time to chat with me today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yay. I'm so excited about this topic. We're like equally excited because I think it's such an important topic. So I'm not even going to waste any time. I'm just going to go into it. So how would you define or describe flow, and why do you think it is just so important in our lives today in both regards to our happiness and our performance?
That's such a great question. And I think it's a really wonderful one to start with for two reasons, because there can be a lot of misconceptions about flow because we've got these two opposing images of what we think it is. So on the one hand, we've got, just go with the flow, passively move through life, don't take any action, just kind of, be a victim of circumstance. And then on the other side, we have the complete opposite of these kind of like very masculine images of kind of Superman heroes, elite kind of athletes pushing themselves to the extreme. And so I think for people, when they think about flow, it can be a little bit confusing because it conjures up quite differing kind of images. And this is the way I best like to describe it. So if you think about gratitude, right? Gratitude makes you more grateful. It makes you more positive. It makes you more happy. Mindfulness makes you more mindful. It slows life down. In the same way, flow is the bridge between happiness and success. It's where you feel your best and you perform your best. And for many people, particularly high achievers, overachievers, we often feel like we have to sacrifice. We've got to do that hustle. We've got to do the work, but we need to sacrifice our happiness. Flow teaches us that actually we can have the best of both worlds. And it's not a magic trick. It's founded in science. So flow is really just about having peak performance and peak happiness both at the same time.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you discussed the really contradictory images that some people have. And I will be the first to admit that that was me. I used to be someone that was all about execution. I was all about how do I maximize my day. I was all about the spreadsheets, all about, timelines and schedules. And I still love that stuff. But I realized that, there was times where I was executing and my strategy was right, but I wasn't making the gains that I wanted to. But the idea of flow to me at the time seemed like, okay, so what you're telling me is that I'm going to sit there and meditate all day and somehow things are going to happen. And I just couldn't get on board with it. But how you've explained it is so spot on. Like it's totally resonating with me that when we are feeling good, then we can perform at our highest. Do you think that that's something that's across the board, or are there exceptions to the rules? Like, is there times where people can perform at their highest and not be feeling great? And then vice versa? Like, do you think there's instances where people can be feeling awesome and still not be performing where they could be at their potential?
Yeah, again, that's a really great question. And I think this is where one of the core conditions of flow is the optimal level of challenge. So in other words, you have a high skill set and you perform it to the fullest of your current level of potential. So I think often, we live in a very instant gratification culture where we compare ourselves on social media. So we think, I should be able to do that. I should be able to start up my business and make 10K in the first 3 weeks. And so we push ourselves and drive ourselves too hard. And whilst we may be performing, our best and pushing ourselves to the best of our ability, actually the challenge level is too high, and that brings us into anxiety. So whilst we might think we're being productive because in the number of hours that we've spent on paper, it looks like I have worked really, really hard, actually, you're not fulfilling your real potential. You're living to an old model and an old formula of that. Productivity isn't about time. In fact, in flow, and when you're able to access flow, productivity increases by 500%. And that's a study by McKinsey. So I think, yes, you can think that you're performing your best, but actually you're in an anxiety state. You're in this state of conflicting priorities, pushing yourselves beyond your current skill level, when actually the joy is in the journey. The joy is when you set that goal and you work towards it, and step by step, you step in and maximize your potential. And the joy is watching who you become at the end of it. Like, who are you becoming with each step and each challenge? So it's not about diving in and achieving and ticking it off within 3 weeks, unless you're at that level. The joy of flow is just step by step, each day with consistency, showing up. So you're not feeling that sense of burnout. You're not, becoming bored with projects. You keep that passion, you keep that momentum, and you enjoy the work that you do.
Oh, I love that. So I have a question on one of the points you said. Did you say that if we are like overstretching in a way, then we're not really in a state of flow? So
yeah,
would you say that a high level of self-awareness now would come into play to kind of know where you're at? Like some people,
yeah.
I see this a lot with some of my clients who want to start a business. It's exactly how you said it. They have these expectations of, well, this person over here is crushing it, and not really considering all the other factors that could have come into play to why that person is. Oftentimes it's a perception too, right? Like sometimes people are not doing as well as they look like, they're doing. So there's like that whole, is it even real type thing first off. But yeah, it's almost like you need to bring them back and say, yes, there are some people who are performing at that level, but from where we're at now, we're working under different circumstances. And so where does self-awareness and all of that come into getting into that state of flow?
Self-awareness is pivotal to flow. So flow is unique to each individual. So what creates flow for me will not create flow for you, will not create flow for the person that's currently listening to this podcast. If you think about our kind of fingerprints and our DNA, that's unique to each of us. So why should what makes us happy and our purpose and the skill level that we have be any different? So I think often we see people just saying, I figured out how I can run my business and make X amount, or I figured out what productivity looks like for me. And so they create this one size fits all and like put it out there in the world, which is sometimes helpful. But in flow, that level of self-awareness is absolutely critical, because it becomes like your internal compass. And you develop this real sense when you begin to work with the principles of flow in your life. You can literally feel when you go off course, like something in your body activates, because when you're in flow, it's an optimal level of consciousness. So you have this huge sense of awareness. Your attention is like massively focused on where you want to be and where you want to go. So that instinct, if you like, will tell you when it doesn't feel right. And on the point of the anxiety, the sweet spot really in flow, it's called the flow channel in psychology, which basically means it's like the Goldilocks zone. So what you're looking for is, when is the skill level not too high that it makes me feel overwhelmed and anxious? And where is it not too low that it causes me to feel bored? Rather, where is that sweet spot in the middle where I feel like, okay, it's a bit of a stretch, but I really think that I can do this if I just give it my full focus. When you get into that zone, that's whenever flow can occur.
Oh, I love that. So it's that balance between the personal challenge, but also like honoring where you're at, you're at, skill set.
Yeah. You've got to start where you are, start wherever you are, and just be patient with yourself. Like you said, we have a lot of examples now, particularly from social media, people, creating perceived images of success, but you don't necessarily know their backstory. You don't know what led them to that kind of place. So I think you've got to be careful of that. If life was that easy and someone could teach you how to do that within a matter of weeks, then everyone would be doing it. So I think sometimes if it's too good to be true, then it probably is.
Totally. And I love what you were saying, that like, it's about the journey. It's like, it's when you enjoy it, and this is like slightly different topic, but that's a lot of what I teach as well, is if you're not enjoying your current state, that step that you're in, if you're not fully being present in what you're doing right now, you're deluded to think that you will enjoy that success when you get there. Because the energy that you bring to a task is the energy you're going to bring. You're just perpetuating that same energy. And so I always say, like, the ends never justifies the means. And so this is what I saw in corporate a lot was, and I put my hand up, I was that person too. I was so goal oriented. I was so stuck on my target that I needed to hit this target. Nothing else mattered. And I didn't care how I was showing up as a person. You know what I mean? Like, I think Eckhart Tolle, he was talking about how, like, whatever spot you're in, whatever phase you're in, that energy that you're sending out to the universe ripples in the universe. That doesn't just go away. So if you're being, just horrible to your family because you're always stressed, and that's what happens when we go into stress, too much stress, right? That's when our behavior is not in alignment with our highest self. And that is impacting people. That energy doesn't go away. So yes, you may have achieved this amazing thing at the end, but you have polluted our world as you get there. And that has always resonated with me. And I was like, And I really made some like significant changes in my life because of that, because I realized I say I'm doing this for my daughter, but am I really? How is she benefiting from a stressed out mom who's always, can't even give her a moment, and sacrificing my relationships and all of that. So I love that you touched on that. So let's talk about your story a little bit, because I love your story. So you were on Instagram, and was it that you posted about a journal exercise that you were doing to get yourself into flow, and how it was having this incredible impact in your life and productivity? And you were contacted by a publisher in New York. Can you tell us that background story?
Yeah, so I think this is a great example of how flow works. So flow is a science and a psychology. It's been studied since the 1970s by mainly a Hungarian psychologist called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And what they found in flow is that we live in a sense of alignment, which is exactly what you've just touched upon. So every thought, every feeling, every perception is in alignment with your higher self or your higher goals. So you get this beautiful sense that you're always in the right place. You feel kind of just fully present in the moment. You can give your attention to the task at hand. So productivity increases. Psychologists call it the secret to happiness. But also, and this is like a really magical part of flow, it's its synchronicities increase, which means people and opportunities just appear. You're like, how did that happen? And for me, how I got the book is a pure example of flow. So like you, I have been kind of in the corporate world. I worked kind of, with businesses, and I was target obsessed, goal obsessed, and it wasn't bringing me the happiness. I kind of hit upon flow because it was called the secret to happiness. And I was like, okay, I need to study about this. Like, let's, bring out my psychology. That's what my background's in. Let's get into this and find out if there's an easy way that I can apply it to my everyday life. Because I'm all about simple practices that are going to be impactful. And so I developed this journal routine, which takes the 3 core conditions of flow and then just puts it into a journaling system, basically. So really simple. It takes 10 minutes maximum in the morning, maybe 5 minutes at night. And one day I just posted it on Instagram, like just literally, it was like the crappiest post you've ever seen. It was literally just like a photograph of 2 pages. Like, it was not glamorous. And I just wrote about, this is the journal system, and, you know, it's really having an impact, and this is kind of why I do it, and these are the benefits, because I was just so excited and so amazed that it was really changing the way that I showed up in life. And I think it was either the next day or 2 days later, I got an email from one of my followers who I didn't really know. She hadn't ever direct messaged me. And she said, "Hi, I've been like following your Instagram account for a while, and you've like posted this journal system for flow, and I love it. And I'm a publisher in New York, and I'd love like for you to pitch for like a book deal about it." And I was like, number one, this cannot be real. So I was like Googling her, like, is she going to be like, pitch for this book deal, and then I'm going to charge you, you know, $5,000 to print X many copies. But actually they're an imprint, but they're part of one of the largest publishing houses in New York. And yeah, I fumbled my way through a book deal, thanks Google, because I really didn't know what I was doing. But I showed up and I did it to the best of my ability. And I think it's that when you're passionate and when you're ready, the opportunities show up. So yeah, I've written my first book. It's due to be published. It'll be published on the 7th of January, 2020. It's available for pre-order now, and it'll be in the UK, the US, Canada, and Australia.
That is amazing. First of all, congratulations. That is so awesome.
Thank you.
I'm so happy for you. I love that. And guys, you can pre-order that on findyourflowbook.com. I will put all of Sarah's links and all of that in the show notes, so you can reach out to her and follow her on all socials and all of that. So I love that story. And I love how you talk about the synchronicities. And I want to add to that, just as an outside, not knowing, it seemed that you were so just in flow and in just enjoying the benefits of this journal practice that there was no attachment for you. You weren't like hungry for this book deal, and you weren't like banging on doors.
No.
That's another thing about, when we talk about like the hustling and the goal setting and the being so target oriented. And there's a lot of coaches that teach on that, about like you bang on every door, and if you get a no, then you just go. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I really love that your story highlights that that's not the only way that it happens. There's easier and like a lot more fun
ways
of achieving.
Yeah. And like, what is it that you're chasing? I think, goals are really important, and goals are super important for flow, but, goals kind of I think they've got a bit of a mixed reputation at the minute. So if you don't like the word goals, just interchange it with intention. Like, goals are one of the 3 core conditions for flow, which is I have a clear goal, I perform it to my optimal level of challenge, and I have immediate feedback. So those are the 3 core conditions that psychologists have said. If those 3 conditions are present, you can access a flow experience in any activity that you do, including washing the dishes. Like, it doesn't matter as long as those things are present. So whilst goals are important, I think, like, what's the end goal? What are you chasing? And if you're chasing success, yeah, you might get it, but is it going to make you happy? Versus, I think, if you are chasing a life of meaning, if you want to wake up every day and be like, I love my life. For me, that is success. It doesn't matter the number of followers. It's amazing that I have the book. Like, I am an ambitious person, but I'm ambitious about my own happiness. And whatever that looks like and whatever that shows up, my core check-ins for me is, do I feel like I'm making a difference in the world? Do I feel happy and passionate about the work that I do? Do I wake up kind of going like, yes, like I'm so ready for today? And I think they're the important things to focus on. Psychologists have proved, there's like a catalog of evidence that proves that if you chase success and external factors and think they're going to make a difference to how you feel inwardly about yourself, it's never going to happen. In fact, it has the opposite effect. So psychologists have proved the people who are more focused on extrinsic goals, it's called in psychology, but let's call them kind of surface goals. If you're more focused on those, you're actually more likely to be depressed. You're more likely to have a higher stress level because you're looking for something on the outside to fix a hole that you feel on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I experienced that in my personal life. And I don't think that you necessarily have to experience your ultimate goal to know that there's a truth to that. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
some kind of success in your life where you felt, oh, I actually thought that was going to feel better because it's so short lived. You know, it feels good for the moment when you're able to get that amount of money, or whether you're able to get that promotion, like it feels good. But if there's nothing deeper than that, then that goes away really, really quickly. Can we, did you want to add something on that?
No, I was just going to say really briefly, I absolutely agree with everything. And I think, I've had a similar experience to you. And I think the lovely thing and the thing that we've both discovered through flow is that you can have both worlds. You can be happy and have ambition. And like, why not have the two together? Why just only have ambition and think that it's going to bring you happiness? Be happy in the moment, live in the present, and have that ambition and those goals. And then even if you don't get there, you felt great on the journey. Like it's been an experience and it's been an adventure. And I think that's what life is.
Totally, totally. And for people who are like really resistant to that idea, because I was resistant to that for a really long time.
Me too.
I heard it. Yeah, I heard it so many times. But if you think about it, if you really think about it, guys, it is never the thing that think that we're chasing. That's what we want. It's never really the boat. It's never really the car. It's never really the partner. It never is. It's always the feeling we think we're going to feel when we get that said thing, right? So what if you decided to feel good now? What if you decided to feel good now? And Ed Milat actually has one of like my favorite sayings, and his whole, I don't know, kind of like life philosophy is that he's blissfully dissatisfied. So that's marrying the whole fact of like, yeah, cool, I'm going for these things, I'm ambitious and all of that, but I'm so happy and so freaking grateful for everything in my life right now. Yeah. And I was like, yes, that's exactly how we should be living our lives. I love that. Okay. So you touched on it, but I just wanted to delve in a little bit deeper. Can you talk us through the 3 core conditions of flow, and however you want to expand on them? It's up to you.
Yeah. So the 3 core conditions of flow are: I have a clear goal or a clear intention. So in other words, I understand like what I'm doing. And the reason that that's really important is it activates a part of your brain. It's just like behind your forehead, called the prefrontal cortex. And that's kind of like the goal-orientated part of your brain. It's where you make rational decisions and you decide like what to do. And so your attention actually needs to be directed. It needs to understand where to go. So you've got to program that information in. So that's kind of what enables you to kind of go like, I'm going to do that over that. So it's really important to have a clear goal because it brings that focus and that alignment. So when the prefrontal cortex is activated, when every thought, feeling, perception is in alignment with that goal, then the prefrontal cortex relaxes, the body relaxes, it gets into harmony. It creates this like sense of inner order in the brain, this like coherence. The second one then is optimal level of challenge, which we've touched upon. So that kind of, I perform that goal to the best of my current level of ability, which is all about understanding where you're at and just kind of checking in with yourself. Is it too easy, or am I kind of stretching myself too hard, and just looking for that sweet spot in the middle, that Goldilocks zone where you're going to do it. It's maybe going to give you that butterflies and the feeling of like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I really want to do it. And I think I am ready. It's that kind of spot. And then the final one is immediate feedback. And that's really important because immediate feedback works with our brain. And high performing athletes, for example, they use immediate feedback through a process called imagery scripting. And so immediate feedback is what you will see, what you will hear, and what you will feel. And when you understand that, it keeps you focused. It lets you know your body or your inner compass or your intuition, whatever you want to call it, will tell you then when you're going off course and when you're on track through kind of the feelings and sensations in the body. So when you pull all those conditions together, it creates a sense of flow. Now, flow occurs in two ways. So that could be either a flow experience, which is kind of what we normally identify with flow, which is you lose sense of time, and the sense of self disappears. So for some people that might be when they give a presentation and they stand on stage and they talk for 15 minutes and they can hardly even remember it. It's just like, where did the time go? What did I even say? Like, that's a flow experience. The other part of flow, which isn't really talked about that much, which I think is massively important, is unified flow. And unified flow in psychology is when you apply those core conditions to life so that it creates a unified flow experience. And what psychologists mean by that is that every single experience in your life makes sense in the past, present, and the future, so that you can look back on your life and it has a complete sense of meaning. And it's that gives us a sense of happiness. So what you're looking for in flow is kind of both. So when you have a clear goal, you perform that goal to the best of your ability. So like whether that's a life goal or kind of like in 2 years what you want to achieve, when you know what success looks, feels, and sounds like, then you can kind of create unified flow. And in the mix of it, you're going to want to find what flows for you. So paying attention when you do work, for example. So for me, I hate spreadsheets and admin, and I'm not in flow in that space. So I try to minimize that or like outsource it. When I am in flow is when I'm researching, when I'm writing, when I'm speaking, when I'm working with other people. So I maximize that part of my work so that time does disappear and I feel great. And, I'm just kind of always in the zone. And then I minimize those things that bring me out of flow. And then you feel happier, more joy, and your life has this kind of greater sense of meaning and greater purpose.
That is awesome. I loved how you explained the 3 conditions. And I love that the 2 parts of flow. So there's the flow experience, which I think we're more familiar with, as you said,
yeah.
where we lose track of time. I think a lot of us have experienced that even at work.
Yes.
Even if you don't love your job, I'm sure you've had experiences of flow where you were like, where did the time go? You just got in the zone. And so that's amazing. But what that I'm a lot less familiar with is the unified flow. So is that about like accepting your past and your present and your future, or can you go into that a little bit more?
Yes. So unified flow is when you have a larger goal or a larger vision, and each day you show up and you act in alignment with that vision. And so if you think about like maybe, if I think about my career, so each day, since I work towards that goal, whether it's through like some simple priorities or tasks or decisions, whatever it is, it's all in alignment with the vision that I have for my life. But sometimes things don't go right. Sometimes there's opportunities that you think you're going to get and you don't, and you miss out on. But actually, when I look back, sometimes the biggest opportunities that I've went, like, I'm so disappointed that I didn't get that. Like I applied, for example, like for a TED talk, and I was like, I'm going to get it. I'm so ready. Like I cannot wait for this. And I didn't get it. And actually 2 months later, I reflected on it and I am so happy that I didn't get that. Like I am not at that stage. Like I'm not ready for that. I might think that I want it, but it's not quite yet. And actually what I need to do is, continue to improve those skills and refine my message. And eventually I'll kind of get there. So that's what unified flow is, because you're able to make sense of the past, present, and future, because we are the stories that we tell ourselves. Literally, like we are self-autobiographical. We construct our stories. It's one of our superpowers. It's not self-deception. It's just an amazing gift that you have that can increase your happiness. So in flow then, even if things don't go right or things do go right, they make sense because you're tying everything back into how did that bad thing actually become a good thing in my life that moved me forward towards my goal? So how did that failure, in kind of the air quotation marks, how did that actually set me up for that big opportunity? What did I learn from it? So it's a coherent life that makes sense. And whether you achieve that goal or not is kind of irrelevant because you've enjoyed the journey. But actually, my experience of flow and kind of working with other people to help get them into flow is you're more likely to achieve it, and you're more likely to achieve it faster because you're more productive and you're kind of calling in those synchronicities, because each day you're showing up and you're speaking your message and you're putting your intention out there. And you're actively looking for that feedback from other people. Your brain's kind of on high alert saying, how do I get her to where she wants to be? So I think that really kind of is the beauty of flow, and unified flow in particular.
I love that, because that totally resonates with me. And I had a similar experience where I applied for this job and I was like heartbroken that I didn't get it. I just thought I was going to be perfect for it. It was like such a dream for me. Like I had journaled about it so much. I was sure it was mine.
Yeah.
And then when it didn't happen, I was like heartbroken. But then same thing, a couple months later, when I was able to reflect on it, I was like, oh my goodness, I am so glad I didn't get that job. That was so not the right step for me, especially at that time. It was so not where I needed to be. So do you think that the unified flow is kind of about your mindset as well? Because as you spoke about, it's our power is our ability to tell the stories about our lives. So if you are a person who is so used to telling disempowering stories about why things aren't working out for you, well, then any hiccup or bump along the way is just going to be something that affirms that prolonged story of your whole life disaster. Whereas if you say that, because one of my mottos is like, if everything's always working out for me, that's just something that I always live by. And even when it feels like it's not working out for me, I'm like, it's working out for me. And I just have to remember that. So when you have this mindset of that it is working out for you, that everything is going to plan because there's a higher purpose, do you think that kind of has something to do with it as well, about being able to get into that unified flow state?
Definitely. I mean, when you feel good, you like life flows. So, you know, if you think about times whenever, let's say on a work day, you wake up and you're feeling happy, you like everything in life is great. Like they're the days that you're able to focus on everything. On the days that you struggle to focus, it's because you have resistance, on like cognitive resistance. So resistance is when two forces oppose each other. So we think about the story, for example. If in that scenario with your job, if you had to carry that with you every day, and every day you woke up and you told the story about, well, you know, I didn't get that job and that's why, you know, I'm doing this, or my life's miserable. And of course, I'm not going to get, you know, this next kind of client proposal or that next kind of interview because, you know, I didn't get that and I'm no good. When you play that, it creates cognitive resistance. It takes you out of the present moment because you're trying to solve that problem in your head. But actually what creates flow is when you release that resistance by telling a more empowering story, which is, this has worked out for me. This is great. You know, actually, this is going to make me a better person, a stronger person. You know, this is going to open up different opportunities and bring me to where I'm meant to be. And we come from that space, then the mind isn't battling with itself. It's in flow. It's relaxed. It's able to focus its attention. And I think the most incredible gift we have as human beings is we can change the story that we tell ourselves. So even if you have been telling yourself a negative story, you know, it's so easy to rewrite it. And one of the great ways to do it, like studies have proven, that all you have to do is kind of go from bad to good. So just take the bad and then reframe it into something that's good. The more you repeat that story, the more your brain wires and fires to form those connections. And the more that story becomes your reality. And that's what we want. We want to empower ourselves rather than fight these inner wars and inner battles, because the past is in the past. Nothing can be done about it. Why not make it into a more empowering future?
Absolutely. So what would you say to someone who, you know, is kind of stuck in this like negative storytelling and they're just feeling kind of stuck? Like what would be those first steps to try to get themselves maybe not even into flow state, but to be more receptive to being in flow state?
So I think it's about taking yourself out of the story. So, you know, often when we tell that story, we're the star of the story. You know, we're in it. We live every single emotion. I mean, and I've been there. I've done it where someone just has to say somebody's name and I'm like, rah! You know, I'm in the story, I'm reliving the drama, I'm literally in that moment of the past. And that's like the primitive part of your brain called the amygdala, which is kind of activated. So what we want to do is then just step out of that story. So look at it objectively as if you were watching like a movie, you know, so kind of replay the story, but at the role of the objective observer. So like imagine kind of the scenario on a TV screen and you're watching it, and then see it for what it is. Like watch the story play out and then think about, okay, I'm not going to be the star now. I'm going to be the editor and the director. What do I want the message of this story to be? How can I re-script it to make it more empowering? And then just write down the thoughts that come to hand and literally re-script it as if it was a movie, or as if it was a play, or as if it was your favorite TV show, and then rewrite the story on paper. You know, so like the friend that treated you badly, like often that anger comes because people haven't lived up to the expectations that we have of them. So just rewriting it and saying, okay, you know, rather than the hurt and anger, you know, that person really taught me patience. It taught me the importance of how to have time for other people and how to be there for other people whenever they're kind of in need. And I'm thankful for that person. And I think being thankful for that experience and kind of looking at it and being like, I'm so glad that that showed up because it was there to teach me a lesson. So take a step back, look at the lessons that can be learned, and literally become the editor and director rather than the star of that story.
So I love that, because you're saying take yourself out of the story and be the editor and director of it. And I love that because like I do a lot of work on emotions, and that's the key. You have to separate yourself from it. Otherwise, it's exactly how you explained. So if you think about a traumatizing experience that happened, whether it was a week ago or whether it was like 20 years ago, those same emotions go through your body. Your body goes through the same physiological response to those emotions in it. And then out of that is so challenging. But if you remove yourself and have yourself as like a third person, like kind of looking down on the experience and saying, how do I want this to look differently? That is so powerful. And I just want to add too, because I can almost like hear the analytical people coming in being like, yeah, but that's all in your head. That's not real. Like it's all in your head. I actually experienced these experiences. So that's real. Let me just clarify something. It is all in our head. Everything is in our head. That is where our power comes from. You know, we can go back and rewrite memories. One of my favorite quotes of Dr. Dyer's is, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. Right? Yeah. It's like, you could have been abused, you could have been anything, but you get to tell that story differently today. And we live from our minds, and that's where the power is. And so we create a different past in the present. So there's so much power in that. So I love that. That was so amazing. So let's go a little bit, like talk about the book that you're writing, and it's founded on your journal practices. But is it going to be like an instructional book? Like what can people expect?
Yeah. So probably the easiest way to compare it is, you know, if you pick up a mindfulness book, it's going to teach you about the psychology and the science behind mindfulness. And then it has simple exercises kind of and practices at the back that you can implement. The book on flow is very similar. It's going to talk you through the psychology and science of flow, but in a really easy to understand way, so that you know kind of the inner workings of your brain, you know what's happening in your body, and some like really fascinating studies that like bring it to life. And then at the end of each chapter, it's how you implement that particular part of the journal practice. So the journal practice is in 4 parts. So 3 parts in the morning, 1 part in the evening. The first part is morning grateful flow, which is wake up happy. So for those people that are familiar with gratitude, it's about how flow and gratitude go hand in hand, because as we've touched on, when we feel good, we're able to focus our attention. So in that practice, you lay your foundations for flow. The second part is called forward focus, and it's here that we live with intention. So you're setting up your intentions for the day, and you're integrating those 2 core conditions of flow, which is clear goals and optimal level of challenge. Now, this is a little bit different from other productivity systems in that this part of the journal practice has high value priorities. There are things that you must do. So may not be exciting. It could be like pay a bill, have that difficult conversation on the the phone. And then the second part is high flow priorities. These are things that you want to do, or things or tasks where you feel in flow. So whether that's, I'm going to go for a walk in nature, I'm going to do a workout, I'm going to cook a healthy meal, I'm going to give that presentation, whatever it is. So this part of the journal system helps you balance that, what I want to do, with what I have to do. Because I think often in productivity, well, this was definitely my experience and my clients' experiences, when we have those kind of priorities, we tend just to write down the things that we have to do, and we kind of forget to nurture our own inner needs. This helps kind of happiness occur and increase those flow experiences that we talked about. And then the last part of the morning routine is called total flow. And this is like my favorite part. I shouldn't have a favorite part, but it is my favorite part. This is where you train your brain. So in total flow, what I've done is I wanted to find a really simple way to get that immediate feedback that was required for flow. And so I was like, how do I do that in a journal system? And so I looked to elite athletes, and they use imagery scripting. So they literally will work with a coach to write out a script about things they'll see, hear, and feel whenever they perform. And what those imagery scripts have been proven to do is increase performance and increase flow. So I've adapted that process in total flow so that you can literally give your brain that immediate feedback. And that's in the morning. So yeah, it's 3 easy parts. I think I timed myself yesterday morning. It's like, takes me 7 minutes to do now. It's like so kind of fast, so easy, but it sets you up for the day and it lays those really strong foundations for flow. And then the very last part is just done before bedtime, which is nighttime reflection. And it's here that you'll become aware, grow, and flow. So you'll look for, when did I feel in flow today? Like when I was working, when did I have a flow experience? Like when did I lose that sense of time? When did kind of like the sense of self disappear? When was I in the zone? Write it down, and then you start to integrate more of those experiences into the forward focus practice. So you start to make more time for those. And then equally, like, what didn't go so well? Like what trends and patterns am I noticing? Like when I write down, for example, my high flow activity that I'm going to exercise, I've done it 4 times this week, and each day I'm not making time for it. So that's whenever you start to tap into the unconscious behavioral patterns and loops that you're running, and just get curious about it. And in the book, I show you kind of how you can do that reflection from an objective kind of position. So yeah, it's very practical, it's very hands-on, but it's filled with like lots of little science-based psychology tidbits to make sure that you get the most out of the practice.
I love that. And that's so up my alley, because for me, like, I love workbooks and all that kind of stuff, but my analytical mind always wants to question. And so I love it when books kind of like frame what they're about to say with some research, so that you're like, okay, this isn't just one person's idea. They've done some like rigorous studies around this. And so how I always talk about it when I talk about emotions is it lowers the resistance in the brain. And then when we've got the lowered resistance in the brain, then you are more accepting to the processes. And so I love that. And I'm really, really looking forward to ordering my copy of your book. I'm honestly so excited for it.
Thank you.
So before I ask my last question, I just want to acknowledge you for the work that you're doing. Flow is a mutual passion of ours. And I think that I love your take on it, as I said, because you're bringing the science behind it, which I really appreciate. And you're bringing it to an audience that in the past may have been resistant. We're not talking about just yogis. You're taking it off the yoga mat where it's been, just widely accepted, and that's amazing, but you're bringing it to an audience that may not be receptive. And I love that, because this needs to become a lot more mainstream, and we need to make it like a part of business. It needs to be a core aspect of it. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I Yeah, thank you so much. Everything that you said, I'm just like smiling from ear to ear. And thank you for the work that you do on it as well. You know, I think when you discover flow and you're passionate about it because you see the difference that it makes in your life, you can't help but want to share it. And I think it's amazing that there's so many more women getting behind this, because I think when it comes to flow, it's either been on the yoga mat or kind of like with men in the boardroom who are using it, you know, kind of like with this masculine superhuman energy or like whatever. And I think it's lovely when kind of women can take this and take this concept and like allow themselves to have that ambition to fulfill their potential and feel the happiness that we all deserve at the same time. So yeah, I've really loved this podcast with you, and I love your work. I love your work.
Thank you so much. And all the feelings are super mutual. Okay. So my last question is, what is the legacy you want to leave this world?
Oh, that's a really good question. The legacy I want to leave this world is to show people how simple it can be to be happier and live a life of meaning. Because I think we just have a tendency to overcomplicate everything. And I think that's probably because I can be an overcomplicator, and I like to bring myself back to the simplicity of life. So I think if I could leave a legacy, it would be to make life simpler and to create simple practices that people can implement to make them happier. But yeah, I hope I can do that.
Love that. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, guys, I hope you got some powerful takeaways from this episode. If so, please share it with someone. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe and review, as it helps us to spread our message of inspiration. Sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Hustler's Guide to Flow.